The Isles of Scilly lie awash in the Atlantic, the very outriders of England. Old tales say that between here and the mainland is the Land of Lyonesse, of King Arthur and his knights, a country drowned long ago. Sometimes, perhaps in a distant city, I think of them out here in their private ocean. I'm always glad to come to them again. Like a man up to his knees in the sea, the Scilly's famous lighthouse, the Bishop, as the islanders affectionately call it, has for years waved farewell to travellers and cautioned incomers of widespread rocks and reefs. This is a Land's End beyond Land's End. Years ago, I sailed by this place, a young soldier aboard a troop ship going to the east. I looked out and saw the lighthouse and the low, mysterious islands, and I thought, I don't want to go to Singapore. This is the place I want to see. And that was the beginning of my love affair with islands. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Hello, how are you? Anything for me? Yeah, okay, bye. One of the reasons I keep coming back here is that it's a wonderful place for loafing, and I'm a born loafer. Hewtown on St Mary's, home to 1,200 people, about half the population of the islands, is a straggle of stony streets wedged between two beaches. There are half a dozen shops, a couple of pubs, and after a while you know everybody. Years ago, I came here on my first honeymoon. A few years later, I was back, running away. The sea wasn't the only thing on the rocks. I took to throwing stones. If this landed closest, I would do so-and-so. If not, so-and-so. Then I'd change the rules. I must have thrown it right once, because it all worked out. But you can't run away anyway, not even to an island. They call them the Fortunate Isles. St Mary's, St Martin, St Agnes, Tresco and Briar. The people who inhabit them know why. Lighthouse men live on Round Island, and the Gew has 2 houses like castaways. The rest lie unpeopled, solitary and silent in the sea, 28 miles southwest of Cornwall.
The spring, now when the flowers are out, is lovely and we get beautiful sunny days usually. It's a very gentle time of year. The summer is gorgeous. The colours are wonderful and the swimming's nice if you don't mind the water being a bit cold. And it's nice to have the long evenings, go for a walk after dinner and things. And beautiful sunsets we get as well. Autumn is when the sun's just that bit lower in the sky. The colours are absolutely magical. The only other place in the world I've ever seen anything similar is the West Indies, where you get the white beaches and then sort of pale turquoise going to navy blue in the sea, and it's gorgeous. And the winter's nice because everybody's relaxed and having a bit of a rest. And we get some very spectacular gales, which are worth seeing. And also lovely, peaceful, sunny days. We're quite often the warmest place in the country, and also the sunniest, which is nice. It's good all the year. There's no time I don't like.
For 6 months of the year, the harbour can be almost deserted without the ferry, the Scilly, which now sails only in spring and summer. Anyone who's endured 3 hours or more of stormy misery from Penzance will tell you why. There's a weekly cargo boat during the winter, the Jenka. People and some merchandise come and go by air. And like the boats and planes, the islanders too divide their lives between summer and winter. Take Barbara Simpson. Although she runs a guest house during the summer, in the winter, while neither looking or sounding like one, she's an auxiliary coast guard, something she's very well qualified to do.
I used to work in London and in the city for Lloyd's Register of Shipping for a long time, and I came over here a few times on holiday and thought it was lovely, and the opportunity came to live here, so we did.
You But being on holiday here and living here, or any island, is a totally different thing. I mean, lots of people say, oh, I'd love to go and live on an island. But they do have problems, don't they? I mean, how did you find it? How did you find it difficult to settle down?
No, we were very lucky. It suited us very well. It obviously wouldn't suit everybody, because in the winter you can be really cut off. I mean, if it's a day the boat's not due to come and the helicopter's grounded because of fog, we don't get any newspapers and we don't get any post, and you're completely isolated. And we love it. It's a super feeling, but obviously other people would not respond to that at all.
Could you ever live and work in the City of London again?
I sincerely hope I never, ever have to.
This is one of the few Coast Guard stations to have such a magnificent all-round view. Inside, there are traditional methods of monitoring the weather. Unlike Falmouth, which is highly computerised, Scilly maintains a more homely approach, and there's always the cat.
Yes, well, she's the only Scillonian in the family. Whenever it's going to blow or rain, she goes mad, and I usually come up here with great dashes in my hand.
So you know there's going to be some bad weather?
It's a sure sign.
It's not just the weather that Denver Child, the Coast Guard, has to be aware of. With the increasing number of yachtsmen these days, the human factor comes into it. People may get tired or there's a bit of fog, and it's up to Denver to coordinate rescue services if they're needed.
We had a Hurricane Charlie, as they called it, the tail end of it, and we had, in fact, we got the rescue shield, you know, for it.
An award?
Yes, an award.
Oh,
that's the highest award that you can get in the Coast Guard service, and the auxiliaries, it was for the auxiliaries, not for me, of course.
Yeah.
And it was a 10-hour night. We spent from about 7 in the evening until 5 the next morning.
For the hapless yachtsmen, the weather is an unknown hazard. But for the islanders, it's a hazard they've grown used to. When I first came to the Isles of Scilly, I stayed with Danny and Wendy Hick on their Robinson Crusoe island, the Gew, although it's sort of attached to St Agnes by a sandbar. Anyway, they've crossed the sandbar and moved to civilization since then, and are now living in a Coast Guard cottage on St Agnes. They have to use boats, although Wendy still hasn't overcome her fear of them. She's had some pretty hair-raising experiences, including one where she was literally thrown from the boat onto the jetty, and she's seen her own sons travel to school on St Mary's.
They go on Monday morning about 8 o'clock, and then they come home again on Fridays.
In the winter, that can be fairly rough, can't it?
Pretty horrific, yes.
Yes.
I think that they're very courageous children. I think that it's a tremendous influence on their lives. It makes them very, very strong characters. I mean, I've watched 11-year-olds go down there and travel in an absolutely terrified manner. And after 4 or 5 years, they're fantastic.
Do you feel romantic about islands? I mean, what do you feel, Danny? Do you feel that it's a romantic place to live?
Yeah, I suppose it is. I mean, I like islands. I lived on one out in the West Indies when I was younger. So I suppose most of my life I've lived on.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it sort of being a unit.
It's all very well being Robinson Crusoe, but you do depend on your neighbours on an island, don't you? You've got to get on with them.
Well, especially on a small island like this, where there's only 50 or 60 people. I mean, everybody, you do rely on everybody else.
When you lived on the Gew, I remember years ago, you had a few animals over there. The donkey, Cuckoo, was in love with the Scilonian, wasn't it?
He used to go mad.
He'd stand up and bray.
That's right, yeah.
And the ship used to answer.
That's right.
Oh, wonderful.
4:15 every day.
The donkey in love with the ferry. Can you imagine living anywhere but in these islands?
No.
Oh, I can imagine it, yeah.
The rhythms of the ocean are like the pulse of life itself. Eternal Father, strong to save. The sea is always in the offing. To all manner of islanders, it's an everyday companion. Abutting some of the world's most hefty seas and taking into account the unpredictability of storms, St Mary's is a place where you need a lifeboat and men of great but quiet bravery to crew her. One family here have spent a collective 71 years going out into the often dark and unruly ocean to save lives. Matt Lethbridge, the last of 3 coxswains of that family, retired in 1985. At the time, he'd received more awards than any serving lifeboatman in Britain, a man about whom it's been said, it's a privilege to breathe the same air. These are his paintings done for relaxation. Did he ever know fear?
Fear is something which is an unknown thing, isn't it? You're just afraid of something that might happen, you know. I mean, so really, if you're there at the time, that don't come into it at all, I don't think.
Now, I've heard that you have a reputation that once you're in that boat, you never slacken speed.
I never, ever eat the boat at all, under any condition. No, I don't think you need to. I mean, no, if you can stand it, the boat will stand it. And I could stand it, so everybody else had to, really, you know.
These islands and the coasts and the rocks and the skerries around here are notorious for shipwrecks. Which was the most memorable from your point of view?
It's a job to pick out anything, but an important one, if you like to say, a good one really was. My brother one time, he was looking out of his window, he lives just up there, and he saw what he thought. He rang me up this evening and he said that he'd seen what he thought a flash of light, and it looked like a torch flashing out just out there. I said, well, I'd meet him down the quay, we'd go and have a look. We went down there and couldn't see nothing. But there was 2 chaps leaning over the quay there, strangers to us. And I went up to them and I asked them if they'd seen anything. And they said no. They said they were off this training ship that was out in the harbour there. So we said, we're just waiting for our boat to come back. They've just gone off with a bunch of the crew, you know, which was young trainees. They were all girls, actually, girl crew. So I said, oh God, I said, that's what it bloody is, you know. Mm-hmm. So we run back, got the lifeboat and tore out to go out towards Carmarthen. On the way, I said to the engineer, I think it was, I said, swing a searchlight round, Bill, so as I could see how far we were from the rocks on the way out, because I was trying to cut the corner. And he swung, well, go between the ledges, actually, and he swung a searchlight round. As it come round, it passed something, and I said, bring him back, bring him back. So he brought him back, and there was this boat in the water with 10 of them. The boat had sunk, and they were just hanging on the sides, and there was all these, they were, like I say, there was one chap that was driving the boat, and the rest were girls, and some of them was really, you know, pretty close to the leave and go sort of style. See, that was 10 people, and I mean, I'm sure that some of them at least would have been drowned without anyone knowing about it till, well, perhaps a couple of hours after, you know.
But that was instinct, wasn't it? That's your brother's instinct and your instinct.
Yeah, it was, I suppose, really.
People from poets to politicians have fallen in love with these fragments of England. When he was Prime Minister, Harold Wilson used to play at Castaways down here. He and his family would walk and fish and picnic, and sometimes only young Peter Thompson, his boatman, knew where he was.
He used to usually go out to different islands every day. Some days he used to like to go mackerel fishing before he, before he landed on one of the islands for the day.
I can remember when Harold Wilson gave the famous press conference out on Samson. Do you remember that day?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's about 20 odd years ago. I can imagine that.
And you took him out there. You took a lot of us out there.
Yeah, it took about 30, 40 pressmen over there, I suppose, that day. Yeah.
And you were the sort of last link in the hotline.
Yes.
Do you remember how that happened?
Well, I mean, if ever there wasn't an emergency, I mean, Whitehall would have probably got hold of the local Coast Guard to start with.
Yeah.
And then they usually used to phone my mother. My mother, if I was down on the beach somewhere like that, she would shout at the window and say, you know, you're needed, go and pick up Harold Wilson from Samson.
So you could have borne very bad news. You could have taken a declaration of war or something.
Could have been, yeah.
Spring, edging from the south, comes early to the islands. London may be deep in snow, but here there are flowers growing, and people will always want flowers. A tentative bunch sent to Covent Garden years ago became an industry which literally blossoms today. Windbreaks cosset the crop from the gales, The expertise of the growers, the mild air, and the sun in winter do the rest. Andrew May is a successful grower in an expanding and highly competitive market. These glorious daffodils, narcissi, and the small perfumed soleil-d'or are sent from Scilly.
All over the country, mostly. A lot go to London, but we do dispatch to Scotland and Wales, every major city. But about 20% of them we export to Europe. To Holland, first of all, and from Holland, mostly to the Scandinavian countries. And we're very proud of the fact that some have gone as far as Tokyo this year. All the flowers have flown out now. People are more demanding, the customers are more demanding, and the flowers have got to get to florist shops in better conditions. So we've got temperature-controlled environments, and we get them off the island as quickly as we can. So they either all go by helicopter or fixed-wing aircraft.
The helicopter can be used for some pretty odd errands too, like bringing in a takeaway from a Penzance Chinese restaurant for John Dart, landlord of the Mermaid Inn. It's a justly famous place, the Mermaid, the Atlantic at its steps, the wind clattering at its windows. Guthrie Pender I've known for over 30 years. The landlord, he's from overseas, he's a Cornishman.
3 years I've been here. Last week, it's the most wonderful place. The people we get here from all walks of life, ex-prime ministers, you'll know who I mean.
Yeah.
One or two writers we get, film stars, actors, everybody comes here.
And sailors.
Sailors. Last week, an Irish lifeboat came in.
All right, I was here.
Yeah.
The Irish lifeboat crew, I know.
Just the crowd coming coming off the street, really.
Marvellous. Come off the sea, then cross it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now you're going off on your holiday tomorrow. Where are you going?
Tenerife. Yeah.
Another island.
Another island. We all go to islands. It's the only way of life.
Yeah. Guthrie, how long have your family been in the Scillys?
Well, since about the 16th century.
60. How many generations is that? God help us. It's quite a lot, isn't it?
Quite a lot.
And you worked all your life on boats now. What are you doing now?
Still on the boats.
Getting ready for the new season, are you?
Getting ready for the new season, yeah.
And what happened? You take the people out to the islands?
All around the islands, out to the fishing boat letters, deliver the mail, anything they want, you know.
But you were a sailor, a real sailor, deep sea sailor at once.
I was in the Navy during the war, mercenary after the war, yeah.
I hear stories about you, though. I hear about you took a man to have his tooth out, and he ended up somewhere. Where was it?
In South America.
What happened?
Well, he came across to Penzance with me, and we got on the booze.
Yeah.
Went to Falmouth, signed on, ended up in Newcastle, got on the hardest mare, and went out to South America.
And he only went to have his tooth out?
Yeah.
God help me. But it's not bad.
People here use boats like some of us use buses, so the winter laying up is a vital time. Even so, in spite of all precautions, the wild weather of the place can lure them to tragedy. Frank Gibson's family have been taking pictures of the resulting wrecks for 4 generations.
In those days, they didn't enlarge the negative as today. It was no miniature which was blown up in an enlarger. The plates were the size that were required, and the composition had to be perfect.
That's the hawser again, isn't it?
This is the actual negative of this print. That's right. So that there was no wastage. The composition had to be exactly right. And in order that they did it, they would obviously used cameras like this, where they had a battery of lenses, so that they used the particular lens to fill the glass plate with their composition.
Well, your family have taken photographs of many, many famous wrecks around these coasts. What's the most spectacular you can never remember?
Well, of course, the biggest wreck in my time has been the Torrey Canyon.
Oh, yes.
That was, as you know, a massive great ship which was wrecked out on the Seven Stones, which is about 7 miles east of these islands. Photographically, a monstrosity. It was really just a long, great hulk. And as you know, after a few days and the oil seeping away, they decided to bomb it. It dispersed quite a lot of the oil that way.
Yes. What about what was the Minnehaha?
The Minnehaha, up until the wreck of the Torrey Canyon, was the largest ship that was wrecked here in Scilly, and that was in 1910. Wonderful ship for the islanders, because you can imagine in 1910 the islanders were not well off. They were all pretty poor people. So a wreck was a manna from heaven. And this particular boat was full of all sorts of things. The majority of the cargo was actually cattle. So the islanders went out, they would get them out of the hold, push them over the sides, so that when they plopped in the water, they would then row up to them, lash a rope around their horns, and virtually tow and guide them to the nearest island, which was Samson. And they rounded up several hundred cattle in this way.
Had a ranch over there.
Oh, yes, yes, it really was an amazing wreck.
Back on St Mary's, some 80 years on, and wintertime finds islanders thrown onto each other's resources. Nothing very surprising goes on in winter. Weekends here are spent much the same as anywhere else. But with a difference, of course, there's fewer people. Football, for instance, the last league in England, is unique. What do you do? Have an active league here?
Well, it's a very well-organised league.
Is it? And what else do you do?
We've got 2 cup competitions, the Daily Mirror Cup and the Fordette Cup, which is a 2-leg one. That's the European one.
Terrific, yeah. How many teams do you have?
Well, this is it. 2 of us.
Oh, there's only 2 teams?
I'm afraid so.
Oh, so you kept pretty busy. Now, what's the names of the teams?
We're the Woolpack Wanderers.
Yes.
We're the Garrison Gunners.
And you play...
We're not as boring as Arsenal.
But you play every week, in other words?
Yeah, home and away.
Are the... Oh, home and away, yeah. I see.
We're away this coming Sunday.
And we're all glad to have the islands to ourselves in the winter, then we can indulge in our hobbies. And people often say to me, what on earth do you do with yourselves in the winter? But, I mean, there's so much going on, really. My particular interests are, choral and theatre club. But there's so many other things you could be doing as well. Sometimes you wish you could have a night at home. Group of singers, islanders, and we always meet on every Monday night, and we do a serious work in the winter. Well, we start rehearsing in September for a performance which we put on in the church on Good Friday. This year we're doing the Elijah, and then we have a lighter form of music for the summer. And in fact, I think this next year we're doing Merry England. It's good fun. We go off in the summer, we go take our concert to the off islands, and I think they appreciate having some live music over there as well.
I have enjoyed my life in Scilly and hope to live the rest of my life in Scilly. I have a brother who actually went into banking, and I certainly wouldn't swap my life for his. You just imagine living on the suburbs of London, travelling up on the train every day to go to work. Okay, he has advantages over me in that the company threw in a car, he probably gets 6 weeks holiday a year with pay, pension at the end of his retirement. But no, there is no way I would swap with him for all the tea in China.
As for me, again and again I'll come back to this place beyond the Land of Lyonesse. I still throw stones, but it's just for fun these days. Over the years I've been familiar with these isles and islanders, firm, independent, humorous, enjoyable people. There's a salty resilience to them, a knowledge that they inhabit a world apart. When I think of these bits and pieces of England, when I'm far away, I take comfort in the sureness that I'll be returning. I always do. It's my sort of place.